Hey everyone, it's Brenda back again with another episode of Three Uniques. Today I have on Chanti Zak. Hi Shanti, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you. So I'm going to go through the list of all the things that you are, which is amazing because we're all multifaceted. But Shanti is the founder of Empathy Marketing, which is an agency. She's a podcaster, a coach, a copywriter. Um, she said amateur homesteader before we pressed record. I'm going to say intermediate because I see all of her Instagram stuff and I'm like, it's pretty good, pretty healthy. And a mom. So welcome, Chanti. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Anything on the list that I didn't mention that you want to share with folks before we get into our interview today?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're all so multifaceted, so probably so many things. But I think you nailed most of the professional ones.
And something that's interesting about you that most folks may not know, and maybe this will come up in your three uniques, but you used to live on an island and then now you live in like a rural community. You bought a farm with your partner. Can you tell us a little bit about that and just sort of, you know,
Yeah.
how that links in with your vision for your life and
Yeah. So living in the middle of nowhere, super rural village with like maybe 100 residents,
hmm
and it's a few hours to the nearest like city that some might even not classify as a city,
right.
and living the dream. Like this has been my vision for the last decade, has been to invest in a little chunk of land and grow food and let my kids free range and to just be connected to that land and live in nature. So living on a Gulf island was a perfect stepping stone to this.
hmm
Also quite remote and quiet and peaceful, but not the easiest thing to afford property on the
Right.
Gulf Islands
Yeah, yeah. Or to build. It's kind of expensive that way. Yeah.
or to build. Yeah. So I had lived in the mountains in the Kootenays when I was 20 for a
hmm
few years and always loved it here. And so we came back.
Amazing. How does
Yeah.
that work with, I mean, you have this, so for our listeners, you have the marketing agency. You're like the quiz master. People seek you out to do quizzes for their funnels and help them generate leads, like myself. And how does that work? How does that, like, being an entrepreneur, being a leader in your business with your team, with your clients, running this farm, being a mom, how do you manage it all?
Yeah. Well, it's a very strange thing to be. Often I'm working with clients that are living in like New York City or Los Angeles and or just these like big metropolitan areas, and they have so much going on, and I feel like I'm like living in the exact opposite, but it doesn't matter
Right.
because we have technology that can connect us from wherever,
hmm
and I'm using that to its fullest extent. But then as far as balancing like rural life and homesteading and farming with being in my office glued to my laptop, that's the real juggle, because there's a part of me that wants to be outside in the garden all the time, or like get a few dairy cows and make raw milk cheese and sell it on at the end of my driveway or something.
Awesome. I love that.
Right. And then there's another part of me that's like super driven and ambitious, and I love working
hmm
with the amazing people that we attract, like yourself, and being at my desk in my office. So it's an interesting ebb and flow. And especially as we move into the warmer season, I'm
hmm
trying to be really intentional about just getting up and going out to the garden, even if it's just for 20 minutes, to have a little break, pull some weeds, do some watering, walk around, having meetings, like walking meetings.
hmm
I was on a real roll. Like I was every team meeting, I was just going for a long walk, and I sort of fell off the walking meeting wagon. But little things like that make a huge difference.
I love it. And so you're here today to share your three uniques with us. I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous.
Okay.
Okay. So here's what I got.
Okay.
Creativity,
Yeah.
connection, and rule breaking.
Rule breaking. But is it rule breaking? RULE?
Or
Rule.
rule breaker. I don't know.
Okay.
See, I was like, before we started, I'm like, should I run them by you? I don't know if I did it right.
Yeah. And for the listeners, I love to be surprised. So when my guests come on, they want to like run it by me, and I'm like, no, 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 I don't want to know. I want to hear it like for the first time, like everybody else. So okay, before you get into that, I love them, and knowing as much as I do about you, that like seems great, and I want to dive into it a little bit more. But when you said, even when you first started, you said, "Oh, I'm a little bit nervous." So do you mind if I just explore that a little bit? Like, how was it coming up with your three uniques, and like even knowing that we were gonna get on this call today and share them?
Yeah, well, it's ironic because I create quizzes and I'm so into assessments and helping people understand themselves better. But at the same time, it's so hard to choose. And it's so hard to say, like, these are the three things that I feel are representative of who I am,
Right.
because that can kind of ebb and flow and it can sort of depend on the day and the energy.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the first one, creativity.
Yeah. Well, creativity is like, it's creating in my business, creating for others, and then creating in IRL, even having a vision for this little piece of land that we have. Like,
Right.
I'm holding that in my mind all the time. I'm holding this vision for what's possible in my clients' businesses, and how can we help you stand out, and all of those things are always percolating. So creativity is like, I think, the essence of my day-to-day life, and sort of the force that makes a lot of magic happen.
Do you ever find that as a creative being and with all these like influence, especially with nature all around you, that it's tiring, overwhelming, or like how do you monitor it, regulate it, or like do you do that? Do you just like let it free fly?
Yeah. Well, what I've started developing, and I'm just deepening this understanding every single day, is that creativity comes in seasons, and it's very unlike a lot of the metrics that we want to like track and analyze, because it's not, it does, well, bringing in the rule breaker thing, like creativity doesn't really follow any rules.
Mm-hmm.
It's this energy that isn't necessarily always predictable. And I think as a culture, we're sort of, it's ingrained into us that predictability is good, control is good. And then we have this force that's so powerful that we can't predict and we can't control. So what does that look like in relationship to creativity and the seasons of it? What I've sort of determined is that there's 3 seasons, and there's like the fallow season, and this could shift from day to day. It could be like,
Sure.
you know, I feel a part of me feels like I've been in a fallow season for 2 years. So it's not, again, not following any rule sets.
Right.
Like, you might go through a long period where you don't feel creative, but that fallow period, even though it seems like nothing is happening, and like,
Yeah,
it's this sense that like,
yeah.
I can't write anything worthwhile. Or if you're like a painter, I can't paint anything good. It's like, that's a real struggle for any creative. But beneath the surface, there's a lot going on. There's usually a lot being processed. and a lot of shadow work happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the fallow period is necessary in order to move into the fertile phase, where suddenly it's like new life, new ideas is springing up everywhere. And so that fertile phase is really exciting, but it's also a time of not knowing.
Sure.
Uncertainty. Is what I'm creating any good? Is it going to work? So that's fertile. And then the flourishing phase is like you're receiving the gifts of that creative effort,
Mm-hmm.
and being in a state of receivership and abundance. Not the easiest thing. Like that's another thing that culturally it's just hard, but is so essential to the creative process. Because I mean, yes, the point is just being creative in and of itself, but it's also really nice when there's a payoff, or even just you can put what you've built into the world
Yeah.
and see if it resonates.
So is there a harvest period as well?
Yeah, that would be like the flourishing.
Okay.
I'm just a freak for alliteration, so I had to make sure they all start with F.
Okay.
But yeah, the harvest, that's the flourishing phase.
Got it. Okay. All right, good. And then
Yeah.
what's been like, or who has been your influence around that?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I have so many mentors, especially in the copywriting space,
Mhm.
where I just learned like you can make your own rules. You can do what you want and experiment and see what happens. So that's been really powerful. And some of my first mentors in that space were Kira Hug and Rob Marsh, and they run the Copywriter Club.
Okay.
And they're so, yeah, like they're both these creative powerhouses that have built incredible businesses and helped so many people. And for them to, one of the first exercises was like, so you do this too, the three uniques, but it was for them, it was like, find what makes you different. And I think there's elements of creativity in that too.
I love it. And so connection is your second unique.
Yeah, connection. Um, and I struggled between like connection and empathy.
Mm,
And I think they're sort of intertwined.
sure.
But in current times, especially, I'm like, maybe connection is the focus. Like, can we find connections between things that on the surface don't seem connected at all? So in business, for example, the connection piece to me has been my willingness to work on my own mindset and work through limiting beliefs and past experiences that I might still be holding on to in the present,
Right.
and all that personal inner work, even like going to therapy and stuff like that, that you would think has nothing to do with running a successful business.
Hmm.
But in my experience, like it's made the biggest difference, more so than any strategy or anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just another tool, it's another resource, and depending on where you are in that business cycle and or season, as you put it earlier, you pull on the tools that are most needed. And it's not necessarily probably in the traditional sense of business, right? Where we think about it's like spreadsheets and charts and like we talked about earlier, like KPIs and ROI numbers. But at the end of the day, it's like, what type of businesses do we want to create? That's what I always sort of look at, like with your three uniques. Like we're here to, like we as human beings consume every single day from this planet, from each other, from other sources, and it's like, what are we doing to generate back? So if we've always done it the way we've always done it, well, we kind of know how that story is going to end, because
Right.
we're doing a massive cleanup around that right now.
Yeah.
That's
And how we've always done it
yeah.
is to compartmentalize and divide and conquer. And I think connection and the principle of that is the very opposite. It's like, where can we find commonality? Where can we do things differently and
Mhm.
prioritize this? And what effect does that have?
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And your third one?
So the third one was rule breaker, rule
Rule breaking.
breaking. I don't
Yeah.
know which tense.
Yeah. Well, I was just wondering if it was rule. Like, are you doing a play on words there? Like, as in RUAL?
RUAL.
Is that how
No.
you spell rule? Urban rule? I don't know. For a second, I have to have like my spelling counter. Anyways, you tell me about your third unique.
Yeah. So that one is just, it's just sort of this lifelong, hilarious thing to me that the more I'm willing to like break the rules that mostly are just established rules in my own mind,
Mhm.
the cooler things happen. Like, so for example, I always I always used to beat myself up for not going to post-secondary. I traveled instead
Mhm.
and then just sort of lived this like hippie lifestyle and I, would always be shooting all over myself like
Right.
you should go back to school. You should go back to school. You're never going to amount to anything if you don't go back to school. And I was always told that growing up as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
So when I started my business, I also had that belief like, well, this probably won't be that successful because I need to like go to school and get
Go to
a
school. Yeah.
degree or something. And that letting go of that rule that I thought was like hard and fast, there's no getting around it. That was like a process that took many years. But I realize now, like, maybe that's actually a strength. Maybe it turned out exactly how it needed to. And I didn't need to follow that rule.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you've drawn that parallel to like rule breaking and to your thoughts, right? To those like limiting beliefs. Because I think that limiting belief of self doubt, it's like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. And it's like, there's something in there, like in the exploration of it, right? Like, a lot of times people will say that self doubt is a sort of a bad emotion to have or, a bad feeling to have because it derails you. But if you spend time with it and learn about it, you can actually grow from it. And it can actually be, you know, like again, when we talk about tools, a useful tool for your business, for your life, if you spend time with it. It's
Thanks.
like I think if we pack it down and allow it
Yeah.
to, to direct or dictate how our life looks, then it can be inhibiting. But I think what you've done is you've turned it around to be a tool for you.
Yeah, right. The question of what is this belief trying to teach me?
Hmm.
And why do I have this belief? Where did it come from? Is
Right.
it really serving me?
Yeah.
And the belief and the rule, I think that like same, but different.
Hmm.
But yeah, essentially that's what it was. And then to pull that energy into creative work has been a very interesting exploration as well. So even with quizzes, when I first started, I was sort of following the blueprint that already existed when it came to like an online quiz and what we saw on like BuzzFeed and all these different platforms. And I realized like this isn't working. Why are we doing it this way? There's so much room for improvement. There's so many different things we could do. And nobody's doing it that way. So I'm gonna do it and see
Right.
what happens.
I love it. And you've worked with some amazing entrepreneurs and business leaders around their quizzes and their marketing strategies. So it's obviously working for you.
Yeah, it's working. And then it's like, okay, what's next? What other rules in the online marketing world can we break and or experiment with
So you've
shifting?
created this new coaching program. that going back to your first unique around creativity and the seasons and really evolving businesses around seasons. Um, Besides what your audience or your clients are going to learn from that experience and take into their business, what are you hoping to learn from that experience?
Well, that phrase, we teach most what we need to learn,
Mm.
is that I think I'm saying it wrong, but you know the one,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that's so true with this program. Like, yes, this is all stuff that I've worked through and developed frameworks around and have done a lot of work around. And here's hoping I'm a few steps ahead, at least, of the people who are in the program, so that I can support them from that place of mentorship and really guide them. But at the same time, it's not like I'm like at the finish line when
Mm.
it comes to understanding and working with the seasons of creativity and my own energy and optimizing the balance between life and business and working on my own mindset and all of the marketing stuff we're talking about too. Like, there's so much room to improve and expand and grow for myself included. So as I'm teaching others, I think it'll just shine a light on all the areas in my own life and business where I just need to take my own medicine even more.
I love it. Um, what's been one of the biggest investments you've made in yourself in the last couple of years? That's like really like you're either starting to see the pay off or pay it forward, but it's an investment that you've done for yourself.
Oh my gosh, I love this question. There have been a lot. I'm really heavy on the self-investment side of things. And one of the recent ones was a life coaching certification program. So that was 6 months long,
Mm-hmm.
like live sessions every Sunday. I'm still working through the practicum and the homework and finishing that up. But that was a huge investment, not financially, but time wise
Right.
and energy wise, because I work all week and then Sunday is like this day to hang out with my family and be with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I really wanted to do this and explore it. So it's proving to be worthwhile just in this fertile ground coaching program exploration, because I'm teaching a lot of what I learned and applying what I learned to help me navigate this shift. So that's already come in handy, and I'm excited to see how it unfolds. I just want to keep doing certifications. Like, I'm such a like course certification junkie, but
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I also earlier this year worked with um, a sales coach, and it's a part of me is really good at sales
Mm-hmm.
in written form, in like conversation form. I felt like that was something I struggled with.
Right.
So I wanted to work with a coach on that. And that's been hugely rewarding too.
Awesome.
Really learned a lot.
Oh, that's great. I love hearing when people are investing in themselves because I'm a bit of that, like you. I like, oh, like, wow, I need to really like follow them and invest in them, either buy their products, their services, something. But I think there's something in there where I know I see, people hesitating to do that. And that's okay. And they have their, reasons why they want to hesitate to sign up for something. But I just find it's like that gift of learning, right? And it's just like it's just never ending, and there's this sort of continual. For me, my perspective is that like I'm going to be on the planet for a long time, and I'm not done yet as far as like learning, shifting careers or interests. I know that whatever I'm doing right now is not going to be like the end, full stop. There's something else around the corner that's brewing. So I love that. I love that example.
Yeah. And if the story that we have around money is that the more I spend on something, the more important it is to me, the more I'm going to prioritize it,
Hmm.
which that's usually my story. So investing money into personal development, business development, it sort of, for me, it forces me to actually do the hard things that I might not have done if I didn't have that force driving me.
I love it. Um, Last question for you is, what's a new habit or a practice? You mentioned going to the garden in the mornings, but is there a new habit or a practice that you've been, kind of folding into either your business, leadership, motherhood, homesteader, that's been really
Yeah.
important to you?
Yeah. One of the habits that I'm starting to really solidify is starting each day with some kind of movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying not to start work until 10,
Oh, yeah, me too.
which is pretty divine.
I
Like,
love it.
yeah, and I get up early. Like, I'm up at 5:30 or
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
So there's this luxurious, also chaotic, because I have young children,
Mm-hmm.
morning time, and I can get yoga or a workout in or a walk,
Mm-hmm.
and then jump into my work day. That's been a real game changer.
Okay, so we were talking before I pressed record about just this. Like I was talking about last year in my business, there was lots of growth and scaling up and putting in systems and processes. So I felt like I was just always doing something. And like you, I made a commitment to, yeah, I'm not going to like book anything with client. Like there's nothing in my calendar before 10 o'clock that isn't just like solo time with me. Now I have kids too. They're teenagers. They can kind of get dressed on their own and all that sort of stuff. But it's still kind of like a little like, let's go, let's get out of the house.
Yeah.
Tight window. So there's a little bit of panic there for maybe 45 minutes. But other than that, I've got these sort of like 4 hours, 5 hours kind of to myself where I can kind of just ease into my morning. And sometimes I can do, like it might be like a big cardio activity where I'm feeling like tired. But most of the time, it's just like this ease into the day. To make that commitment to yourself, to put in that habit, was there any like withdrawal of like, oh, I'm not being efficient enough, I'm not performing, like I
Oh,
need to spend
yeah.
time, I'm being lazy? Did that ever come into your thoughts? I'm just curious because sometimes I wrestle with that.
Yeah, big time. And when you said withdrawal, that actually reminded me of another layer of this
Mhm.
habit. So the other layer is that I stopped checking social media in the mornings.
Okay.
So I'm not like really checking until after 10,
Hmm.
and sometimes even like afternoon. And that's been the piece where I've had the most like painful withdrawal, FOMO, like,
Yeah.
what am I missing? I just want to be tapped in and I want that dopamine hit.
Hmm.
But I've gotten beyond that now and it's not an issue anymore, but it was really hard. Like the first month or two of not first thing when I sit down with my coffee, like opening up Instagram,
Hmm.
I didn't really know what to do with myself.
Okay, good. All right, that's good. I love that. So for anyone listening, it's like just keep riding that wave. It's a good thing. The
Yeah. Oh, it's been
autopilot is good.
so nourishing to my own nervous system to just have that like chill morning, read a book, hang out with the kids, and then I've noticed I'm more productive
Hmm.
when I do that and I start at 10 and take actual breaks during the day.
Right.
Like eating lunch is like a new concept for me.
Right.
So that's another thing I'm like, oh, I could take a break at 1 o'clock and like eat lunch
That's awesome.
without my laptop in front of me.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, last question for you is, and this goes to Tim Ferriss. If I could give you a billboard and it could be anywhere in the world and you could put anything on it, what would it say and where would it be?
Oh my gosh. I just got goosebumps because I asked this question
Mhm, I
to
know you.
all clients, and I'm sure I asked you,
Yeah.
and I have never answered it for myself.
Oh, this is amazing because I ask it at the very end. It's always my last question before I sign off on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's really hard.
That's what everyone says, so it's okay. Take it easy. Where would you put it, first of all? Start
I
with
think
the
I would, maybe something cheesy like choose love,
mm,
and I'd put it on the busiest highway in the world.
which is, I don't know, like an highway out of London or something. I have like, something like that, or
Yeah.
LA
Yeah.
freeway.
Yeah. Or you know what, another, and this isn't my own quote, I think it's Eleanor Roosevelt that said,
Hmm.
people won't remember what you did, people won't remember what you said, people will remember how you made them feel.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can put the choose. What was the first one? Choose love.
Yeah.
We can put that on the B side of the, or like pretend
Oh, we get two
headquarters.
sides.
Yeah,
Okay.
the old school billboards where they used to flip. Those ones.
Oh, yes. I
Yeah,
love those.
it can be
Perfect.
the B side photo. Shanti, it's been great having you on today. Thanks so much for sharing your three uniques with us.
Thank you for having me.
And for everyone tuning in, I always wrap up the call with there's 7.8 billion people on the planet. Get out there and share your three uniques. Somebody needs what you've got. Thanks, Shanti.
Love it.